In an ordinary American neighborhood, a teenage girl dashes out of her home and halts in the middle of the road, staring at something that terrifies her. A neighbor offers to help, but she insists she's okay and rushes back inside, ignoring her father. Moments later, she reemerges with the car keys, speeds off, and heads to the beach. There, she receives a call from her father, expressing her love as though it might be their last conversation. The following day, the girl is discovered dead on the beach with a broken leg at an unsettling angle. Later, Jay accompanies her boyfriend, Hugh, to the movies. While they wait, they play a game of observing the people around them. Hugh points out a lady in yellow at the back, but Jay fails to see her and questions if Hugh is playing a prank. Hugh's discomfort becomes apparent, and he insists on leaving. As they walk to the car, Jay wonders if the person he saw was an ex, but Hugh denies it, saying he feels unwell. Later, they have dinner together, unaware of someone outside their window. A few nights later, Jay and Hugh go on another date to the beach. Their kissing quickly intensifies, and Jay suggests they go back to the car and do something naughty, which is a first for her. Afterward, as Jay rests and talks about her dreams, Hugh suddenly uses chloroform to make her sleep. Minutes later, Jay wakes up tied to a chair in an abandoned building. Hugh hasn't bothered to dress her, just pacing around, telling Jay to remember what he's about to explain. He tells her someone gave it to him, and he passed it to her when they were close. This thing will now follow her, maybe looking like someone she knows or a stranger. Hugh notices it and nudges Jay until she sees it too, a naked woman coming closer. Jay's puzzled, but Hugh insists she must give it to someone else to get rid of it. If it takes her, it'll come after Hugh next. As the woman gets nearer, Hugh clarifies he did this to make Jay trust him. They reach the car and drive off. Finally, they arrive at Jay's house, where Hugh abruptly leaves her on the street before vanishing without a word. Her sister Kelly and her pals hurry to assist her and notify the authorities, prompting all the neighbors to gather for gossip. Jay explains to the cops that everything was consensual, and she never visited Hugh's place because she felt embarrassed about its location, though she did know the address. Afterward, Jay is taken to the hospital for tests. Physically, she's fine, but the incident has left her with emotional scars. The police scour the old building and the address Jay provided, but they only discover the chair and Jay's bag. There's no trace of Hugh, the woman, or the car. Soon, the police learn that Hugh used a fake name to rent the house, leaving them with no leads to pursue. Upon returning home, Jay barely eats. Whenever she's alone in the bathroom, she fixates on her reflection in the mirror and examines herself as if expecting a magical revelation. One afternoon, she's startled by a noise at the window, but it's just a ball tossed by a neighbor kid. Returning to her college classes, Jay gazes out the window and spots an elderly woman in a hospital gown heading her way. Although there are others outside, nobody else seems to notice her. Initially trying to ignore the woman, Jay grows increasingly uneasy and eventually leaves the class, catching Greg's attention. In the hallway, the old woman continues to tail Jay, passing right by people unnoticed. Feeling frightened, Jay hurries out and drives to the shop where Kelly and their friend Paul work. Though they doubt anything supernatural is occurring, Paul volunteers to spend the night at Jay's house as a precaution. Since it's evident Paul has feelings for Jay, they decide to invite their friend Yara over as well. That night, Jay struggles to sleep, so she joins Paul on the couch to watch TV. They reminisce about their childhood and share memories of their first kiss. All of a sudden, they hear glass shattering, so Paul inspects the commotion to discover a broken window. Despite searching, he sees no one outside. Paul then rushes to wake Kelly to call the police, while a worried Jay heads to the kitchen, only to encounter a half-naked woman approaching her, causing her to lose control and wet herself. In a state of terror, Jay screams and flees upstairs to lock herself in her room. Paul and Kelly come to check on her, swearing they haven't seen anything. Jay eventually opens the door for them and breaks down. As they try to comfort her, there's a knock on the door. They open it to find Yara, but suddenly, a creepy-looking man appears behind her and enters the bedroom. Screaming in horror, Jay escapes through the window and finds a nearby bicycle, which she uses to flee. Greg, nearby in his car with his date, witnesses her frantic escape. Pedaling as fast as she can, Jay reaches the park and settles on a swing, scanning the area for potential threats. At that moment, Jay spots some shapes among the trees, but it's just her friends. Kelly embraces her, offering comfort. Soon, Greg joins them, and they inform him about the break-in. Jay decides she needs to locate Hugh. Greg agrees to assist, and the following morning, he drives the group around town in search of Hugh. Arriving at the house he rented, they notice Hugh improvised an alarm system using cans and bottles on the windows. They also find numerous medications in the bathroom cabinet. In the attic, Jay notices a hole in the newspaper covering the window and peers out, quickly withdrawing when someone passes by. Paul discovers dirty magazines and used tissues near a mattress. Among the magazines, they find a photo of Hugh with his ex-girlfriend wearing a school jacket. Later, Greg and Jay visit the school from the jacket's emblem. With the help of a secretary, they uncover Hugh's real name, Jeff, and his actual address. They head to his real house, where Jay is stunned to meet Hugh's mother. She claims Jay resembles the naked woman from the previous night. Hugh agrees to talk with the group and reveals that despite the entity following Jay, he can still perceive it. He asserts there's nothing they can do except pass it on, advising Jay to engage in intimate relations with a new partner. Greg doubts the truth of Hugh's claims, which angers Hugh. He reminds them that he's also in jeopardy. If Jay succumbs to the entity, it will target him next and continue down the line until it reaches the initial carrier. Hugh apologizes to Jay, admitting he was also a victim, revealing that a casual encounter from a bar initiated his ordeal. When someone passes by, Hugh becomes extremely anxious, but everyone else confirms they can also see the individual. Believing they need to create distance between Jay and the entity, Greg leads the group to his family's vacation house many miles away. Following Hugh's lead, Jay sets up cans on the windows as a makeshift alarm. Greg retrieves a gun hidden by his family in the shed and teaches Jay how to use it for self-defense. Later, the group heads to the beach to unwind. Unaware, they fail to notice someone resembling Yara sneaking up from behind while Greg is away. Suddenly, the entity tugs Jay's hair. Although the others cannot see the entity, they witness Jay's hair moving. Reacting, Paul seizes a chair and attempts to strike the entity. While he succeeds in freeing Jay, the force of the blow pushes Paul back, allowing the entity to return. As the entity continues its pursuit, the group flees into the shed. Inside, Paul notices marks on his stomach from the entity's push. Jay discovers the gun and begins firing at the entity, initially missing until she manages to hit it on the neck. The entity falls, but swiftly regains its footing. Jay swiftly locks the door as the unsettling man from the previous night passes by the window. Suddenly, something starts pounding on the door until it creates a hole. Just then, Greg arrives. Despite their claims of danger, Greg remains skeptical and decides to check outside. Jay grows anxious when the noise outside ceases, and she approaches the door just as the entity returns, crawling through the hole. Shrieking and frantic, Jay bolts through another door until she reaches Greg's car. The entity still pursues her, so she drives recklessly. When she glances back at her pursuer, she almost collides with a truck. Swiftly maneuvering, she narrowly avoids the collision, but crashes into a cornfield instead, losing consciousness. Upon awakening in the hospital, Jay discovers she has a broken arm. Startled by footsteps in the corridor, she's relieved to find it's just a nurse. In the evening, Greg agrees to keep her company. In the following days, Greg continues to visit Jay, fueling Paul's jealousy. Greg, having not encountered anything eerie, doubts the existence of the entity. However, as Jay's companions witness the hair and the chair incident, they align with her, believing in the curse. Upon her release from the hospital, Jay opts to stay home, refusing to venture out. One evening, Jay spots the entity taking on Greg's appearance and heading toward Greg's house. Attempting to enter, it finds the door locked and instead shatters a window to gain access. Jay tries to reach Greg by phone, but he doesn't pick up, prompting her to rush to the house and enter through the broken window. Upon entering, Jay encounters the entity disguised as Greg's mother, knocking on his door. She tries to warn him not to open it, but Greg disregards her caution, allowing the entity to attack him. Peeking into the room, Jay witnesses the entity assaulting Greg's lifeless body as the lights flicker. Horrified, she flees, escaping in a car, tears streaming down her face as she notices the entity following her once more. Eventually, she arrives at the woods and opts to spend the night there. The next morning, spotting 3 men in a boat, Jay removes some of her clothes and wades into the water. Upon Jay's return home, she and her sisters decide to sleep together in the same room, with Yara joining them for safety. One morning, Paul visits and expresses his willingness to confront the curse. He attempts to hold Jay's hand and kiss her, but is rebuffed. Paul then unveils a plan, prompting the group to depart together in the car. As they leave, Jay spots the entity on her roof. Moments later, they arrive at the university pool and set up their electronics along the pool's edge. Jay immerses herself in the water, and the group waits as a storm rages outside. Eventually, the entity appears, resembling Jay's deceased father. It circumvents the pool but refrains from entering. Jay points it out to the others, describing its appearance, when suddenly it begins disconnecting the electronics to toss them into the water. Initially, Jay swims away to evade the projectiles, but she's struck in the head by a machine, causing her to bleed. Despite the creature's assault, Jay continues to indicate its position, while Paul attempts to shoot it, accidentally hitting Yara in the leg. Undeterred, Paul tries again, managing to shoot the entity's hand as an iron hits Jay. At that instant, Kelly drapes a sheet over the creature to pinpoint its location, allowing Paul to aim and shoot it in the head, causing it to plunge into the pool. Jay attempts to swim away, but the entity seizes her ankle, pulling her under. Paul fires again, struggling to land a shot until finally striking the entity's head. Jay breaks free from its grasp, noticing marks on her ankle. As she gazes at the water, she observes it gradually filling with blood. Upon returning home, Jay and Paul finally address their feelings. The following day, Paul drives near some street workers, contemplating transferring the curse to them. Later in the afternoon, Jay and Paul stroll down the street hand in hand, oblivious to the mysterious figure trailing behind them.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and stay connected with us.